This section of our presentation will discuss how the problem with minimum wage is that it is not a living wage. In the early 1900s, child labor seemed to be rampant in the United States. This cheap labor was exploited for profits and included dangerous working conditions as well as extremely low wages for factory workers. As the Great Depression ended, President Franklin D. Roosevelt could not stand the thought of these abysmal conditions and stated, "I laid down the simple proposition that nobody is going to starve in this country. It seems to me to be equally plain that no business which depends for existence on paying less than living wages to its workers has any right to continue in this country. By business, I mean the whole of commerce as well as the whole of industry. By workers, I mean all workers, the white-collar class as well as the men in overalls. And by living wages, I mean more than a bare sustenance level. I mean the wages of a decent living." So after several congressional rounds of debating, the Fair Labor Standards Act was passed in 1938 that sought to eliminate child labor and extend a set minimum wage to the general workforce. The FLSA established a federal minimum wage of 25 cents an hour for covered workers. Not only did the act establish a nationwide minimum wage, it also established overtime pay, record-keeping, and child labor standards. Anyone working more than 40 hours a week had to be paid rate of time and a half, then about 37 cents an hour. This legislation established a worker's basic rights, thus attempting to ensure the well-being of the American workforce. The Fair Labor Standards Act had long-lasting implications that still affect American workers today. Fast forward to July 2009. The FLSA increased the federal minimum wage to $7.25 an hour. According to this amendment, certain occupations and establishments are exempt from minimum wage and/or overtime provisions, including employees less than 20 years of age and certain full-time students, certain learners, apprentices, and workers with disabilities. This is the minimum wage as we know it today. In 2013, 5 states passed measures to raise the minimum wage. In Washington, as of January 1st, 2013, the minimum wage was set to $9.19 an hour, making it the state with the highest minimum wage. More than 50 local governments across America have implemented living wage ordinances since 1990. An additional 30 cities have living wage campaigns working towards implementing a living wage policy. In Tennessee, there is currently no state minimum wage law. Therefore, eligible employees are entitled to either federal minimum wage at $7.25 an hour or the tipped wage at $2.13 an hour. Currently, this means that 117,000 people, or 7.4% of Tennessee's population, earn right at or below the federal minimum wage. Additionally, this also means that Tennessee has the highest percentage of minimum wage workers in the United States. The suggested living wage for Knoxville, Tennessee is $8.86 an hour for one adult with no dependents, and for one adult and one child is $17.79. Because the federal minimum wage is not a living wage, Tennessee businesses are creating an issue of corporate welfare where individuals working full-time are forced to ask for government assistance to survive. These citizens fall into the poverty bracket regardless of their integrity or ability to work full-time. Most recently, in 2014, the proposed legislation, HB 1694 and SB 2145, sponsored by Mike Turner of Old Hickory and Reginald Tate of Memphis, Tennessee, would establish a minimum wage of $8.25 an hour for employees whose employers did not offer health benefits. However, the minimum wage would not change if an employer did offer health benefits to its workers. Unfortunately, this bill failed in the House Subcommittee of Consumer and Human Resources on February 26, 2014. On February 12th, President Obama signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for federal contract workers from $7.25 an hour to $10.10 an hour. This change will go into effect next year and will only apply to new government contracts and will affect a little over 2 million American workers. There are news reports that President Obama hopes that this action will encourage Congress to pass federal minimum wage for all employees this year, which will affect about 1.6 million American workers. But whether or not this legislation will be proposed or voted on is unclear at this point.